everyone, thanks for joining us again. As we hit year 4 of the war in Ukraine, I know a lot of you are struggling to make sense of things. One question keeps popping up in my inbox, and you sent me some interesting stuff this time around.
Yep.
The question is Zelensky the one holding up a ceasefire?
It's a huge question, isn't it?
He really is.
Especially now, late March 2025.
Yeah.
Trump's back in the White House as of January.
Yeah.
And there's this whole new push to end the war.
Right.
We've got Putin, Zelensky, and Trump all talking directly, trying to hammer something out.
Exactly.
And even easing sanctions on Russia is on the table now.
So for this deep dive, we're really going to focus on Zelensky.
Okay.
What's driving his decisions? And based on all the stuff you sent, is he really the main roadblock to peace?
Let's get into it.
All right, let's unpack this.
So think back to 2019, Zelensky wins the election.
Yeah.
Big promise peace with Russia, total change from the last guy.
Right.
And remember, this is a guy from TV, no political background. He wins because people were just exhausted after Crimea and the fighting in Donbass,
Yeah, 5 years of it at that point.
It all started in 2014. It's a big deal.
Exactly. So he really tapped into this yearning for peace.
He did.
But those early peace efforts hit some serious walls.
Oh, they did. Big time.
What happened?
Well, you had hardliners in Ukraine, folks, dead set against giving anything to Russia. Then you've got the West, not exactly a united front,
Right.
And then there's the Minsk agreements. This whole attempt to de-escalate after 2014.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, never really worked.
So all of this pushed Zelensky into a tougher stance.
Yeah, I think you can see that happening.
And then everything changes with the invasion in 2022.
The whole game changes.
Zelensky becomes this global symbol of defiance. He rallies the world, leads the defense of his country.
And that image of him standing firm.
Yeah.
That's what he's going for.
But could that same firmness be what's making peace so hard?
It's a real possibility.
And yet, your material suggests he might be softening his position as we moved into late 2024 and this year.
You're right. There are signs of him being open to a truce.
So he's not totally against it.
No, but he's got conditions.
Like what?
He wants serious security guarantees from the U.S., something like what Japan and South Korea have.
So he doesn't want to be left hanging again.
Exactly. And no way is he recognizing any of Russia's land grabs in Ukraine.
So is this him being realistic, or is he still clinging to positions that are just not going to work?
It's tough to say for sure.
Now let's talk about Trump. Back in the picture, he won the election in November 2024, and immediately Ukraine is front and center.
Oh, yeah. After he took office in January, ending the war became priority #1 for him.
And your sources suggest he's using a two-pronged approach, pressure and incentives.
Absolutely. You can see that in how he's handling things. The phone call with Putin in February, all the high-level meetings.
Yeah, but then there's that Truth Social post early March where he threatens massive banking sanctions if there's no peace deal.
Right. And on the other hand, there are whispers about the White House thinking about easing sanctions on some Russian elites and companies.
Trying to sweeten the deal for Putin.
Basically?
This is classic Trump America first.
Oh, yeah.
End the war fast, even if it means pushing Ukraine into a corner.
And it's interesting because it shows his approach to foreign policy.
Transactional.
Yeah, not really about values, more about what's in it for the U.S.
Okay, so huge potential shift in tactics there. What's the logic behind this according to what you found?
Well, the sources point to a few things.
Right.
Money, the cost of helping Ukraine is adding up.
Right.
Then there's the global markets. They need stability.
Yeah.
And this is a bit of a curveball, but countering China.
How does that tie in?
They think a better relationship with Russia could help keep China in check.
Interesting.
It's all about that balance of power.
Right. And all this leads to direct talks. But from what you sent, it sounds like those talks with Zelensky are anything but smooth.
Yeah, there's definitely tension there.
What are they saying?
Some people in Trump's team see Zelensky as the problem.
They think he's blocking the peace process.
Exactly. And get this, there are even reports of a pretty heated meeting in the Oval Office.
Really?
Yeah, earlier this year, Trump and Vice President Vance basically told Zelensky to get on board with their peace plan.
Okay, so let's get to the core of it. What are the main arguments that Zelensky is actually the one stopping peace from happening?
The big ones are his demands for security guarantees from the U.S.
Okay.
And his refusal to give up any Ukrainian territory to Russia, especially Crimea.
Crimea, which Russia took back in 2014.
Exactly. That's a huge sticking point.
And how do those positions compare to what Putin's saying he wants?
Night and day.
Like, what's he asking for?
Putin wants the West to stop all military aid to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And he wants Ukraine to completely disarm.
So basically surrender.
Pretty much.
Unrealistic.
From Zelensky's perspective, totally.
Yeah.
You also sent some social media posts from late 2020, early 2025.
Yeah.
Some people think Zelensky's holding out for a full Russian retreat.
Like they're just going to pack up and go home.
Yeah, and some analysts are saying that's just not going to happen.
And then there's that whole vibe coming from Trump's inner circle.
We touched on it earlier.
Yeah. But it's pretty important.
Oh, absolutely.
What's the feeling there?
They see Zelensky as a major obstacle.
Oh,
There's even this crazy story that some of them are calling him a dictator.
a dictator.
And they're questioning whether he's really in control in Ukraine.
Wow.
It's pretty wild.
But you've also given me this whole other perspective,
Right.
stuff that really sheds light on why Zelensky is taking the stance he is.
Context is everything.
It really is. So what's the other side of the story?
Well, first of all, Ukraine has been incredibly successful in fighting back against Russia.
Yeah.
Remember, they're outgunned, outmanned, but they're holding their own.
David and Goliath.
Exactly. And they're not just protecting their land.
They're protecting their identity.
Exactly. They're fighting for their right to exist as a nation.
Wow. Against what many believe is Putin trying to wipe them off the map.
It's a fight for survival.
And when you look at the history of ceasefires in this region, Zelensky's demands for security guarantees start to make a lot more sense.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I mean, how many broken agreements have there been?
Your sources say at least 25 since 2014.
25.
Promises broken time and again.
Like that drone attack on Kyiv back in March.
Right after Putin said he wouldn't hit energy infrastructure anymore.
It just shows you can't really trust anything.
And that's Zelensky's point. He can't afford to take Putin at his word.
Security guarantees aren't just some wish list for him.
No, it's about making sure Russia can't just regroup and attack again later.
It's about survival.
Exactly.
And you also pointed out how Russia's economy has actually held up better than expected despite the sanctions.
Yeah, that's a big factor.
I mean, they've managed to find ways around a lot of it.
They've got this whole shadow tanker fleet moving oil around.
Right.
And they're pivoting to new markets.
Right.
China, India.
So the sanctions aren't really crippling them.
Not as much as people hoped.
And that probably makes Zelensky even more hesitant to trust that sanctions alone will force Putin to back down.
For sure.
We also have to remember Zelensky's dealing with a lot of pressure back home.
Oh, yeah. And internally, it's a whole other battlefield for him.
What are the main challenges he's facing domestically?
Well, the ultra-nationalist groups in Ukraine, they're fiercely opposed to any concessions to Russia. Any talk of giving up land or compromising, and they get really aggressive.
Like actually threatening him?
There have been credible threats against Zelensky if he makes any deals.
Wow.
And beyond those groups, the overall public opinion in Ukraine is pretty clear.
They want to keep fighting.
Yeah, they're not ready to give up.
So Zelensky's position isn't just his own personal view.
It's a reflection of what a lot of Ukrainians feel.
He's got to walk a tightrope.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if Zelensky's not the only one holding things up, where else should we be looking? What about Putin? What's his role in all this?
Well, from the stuff you've shared, it's hard to see Putin as genuinely interested in a fair peace.
In what way?
Took that proposed 30-day ceasefire back in March.
Yeah.
He shot it down.
He did.
Only offered to pause attacks on energy infrastructure for a bit, and even that didn't last.
Right.
And then there are his demands stop all military aid to Ukraine and full demilitarization.
Essentially turning Ukraine into a sitting duck.
Pretty much. And let's not forget, he's already occupying almost 20% of Ukraine.
Yeah.
It seems like his goal is to weaken Ukraine as much as possible while keeping what he's taken.
And those demands are basically non-starters for Ukraine.
Yeah, they're designed to be deal breakers.
Okay, so what about the bigger picture? The U.S. and Europe, how are they impacting this whole situation?
Well, under Trump, the U.S. is pushing hard for a quick resolution.
Yeah, peace at any cost.
But that could backfire.
How so?
If they rush into a fragile truce without dealing with the root causes of the conflict, it won't last.
Like, what are the root causes we haven't really addressed?
Well, there's Russia's security concerns, their whole issue with NATO expansion,
Yeah.
and then there's Ukraine's aspirations to join NATO.
Which Putin sees as a direct threat.
Exactly. These are the things that need to be tackled for a real lasting peace.
And what about Europe?
They're all about supporting Ukraine in words, but they haven't given any solid, legally binding security guarantees.
So it's all talk, no action.
Pretty much.
No peacekeeping troops, no real commitment.
And that leaves Zelensky in a tough spot.
Relying on the U.S., which under Trump is a bit unpredictable.
Yeah, it's a risky situation for Ukraine.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. If we want to move beyond just focusing on Zelensky,
Yeah.
what are some other ways we could potentially find a lasting solution?
Well, the material you sent makes a really strong point.
What's that?
A real ceasefire needs more than just Ukraine giving.
Ah,
Russia has to be genuinely willing to negotiate.
good faith.
And there needs to be a rock-solid international system to make sure everyone sticks to the deal.
Enforcement.
Ex-
And easing sanctions on Russia could be a starting point.
It might get Putin to the table.
But it can't be the only thing.
No way, you'd need some serious countermeasures to balance it out.
Like what?
International peacekeeping forces in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Or concrete security guarantees, something like NATO, but for Ukraine?
To make sure they're protected if Russia tries anything again.
Exactly.
Your material does mention a few times where Zelensky has shown some willingness to compromise.
Oh, yeah. There's that partial ceasefire they agreed to back on March 19th after talking with Trump.
Yeah.
But there's a limit to how far he can go on his own.
He can't just disarm and leave Ukraine wide open.
Right.
So what's the real sticking point here?
It seems like the biggest problem is there's no real peace plan on the table right now.
No comprehensive plan that everyone can agree on.
And a plan like that would have to address everyone's concerns.
Including Russia's.
Yeah, you can't just ignore their anxieties about NATO.
Which is where that idea of a new European security architecture comes in.
Yeah. Exactly. A system that includes Russia, but also guarantees Ukraine's security.
So it's not just about placating Russia.
No, it's about finding a way for everyone to feel safe.
And until something like that is in place, Zelensky's reluctance to make big concessions makes sense.
He's being cautious.
Yeah, he's in a really tough spot.
It's a high-stakes game.
It is, and even Trump seems to have dialed back his early confidence about a quick fix.
Oh, yeah. Remember, he was saying he could end the war in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Well, in a recent interview, he admitted it's way more complicated than he thought.
So it's not as simple as just getting Zelensky on board.
Not at all.
Okay, so after this whole deep dive, back to the original question, is Zelensky the one stopping peace in Ukraine?
Based on everything we've looked at,
Yeah.
it's not that black and white.
It's more complicated than that.
Way more.
Zelensky is the face of Ukraine's resilience. He's dealing with immense pressure from all sides, internally and externally.
He's got a nation deeply distrustful of Russia.
And facing intense pressure not to compromise.
It's a heavy burden.
And this whole stalemate isn't just on him.
Right.
It's Putin's ambitions, Ukraine's determination to defend itself, and the world's inability to find a united solution.
It's a mess.
It really is.
Easing sanctions could be a start, but real peace. That requires everyone facing some hard truths.
Not just Zelensky.
Exactly.
It's about more than just concession.
It's about building a system where peace is actually possible.
So if we want to think bigger, what kind of world do we need to create? What would a new international order look like? What security guarantees could actually work? Those are the questions we need to be asking.
Absolutely.
It goes way beyond Zelensky.
It's about the future we want to build.
Thanks for that. Really appreciate it. And to all our listeners out there, keep those questions coming. We'll keep digging, and see you next time.